There's this magic number floating around, 2 million, 3 million, whatever number the internet told you on a given day that you needed to retire. But here's the problem. That number could be way too high or way too low for you. General rules of thumb don't understand how much your life costs. Hi, I'm Nick Morrison, a certified financial planner based in Raleigh, North Carolina. I help people plan for their next chapter. Generally folks in their 50s and 60s trying to figure out retirement. And today, I want to cover why those numbers are not very helpful and what actually matters when trying to figure out if you have enough. So where do these numbers come from? You've probably seen an article that said you needed 2 million to retire, or as much as 10 times your annual salary by age 65. Well, these articles, these rules of thumb, they're built on averages and conservative assumptions. But how long you'll live, how much you'll spend, how aggressive you are with your investments could look very different between you and your neighbor or your coworker. And it may be prudent to have a conservative assumption, like take no more than 4% of your portfolio out each year, but you start stacking multiple conservative assumptions, and that can lead to missed opportunities and regret. Here's what years of these conversations have taught me. Not every retiree wants the same thing. I've sat across from some retirees that wanted to spend every dollar they've saved enjoying their retirement, while other retirees wanted to live frugally so that they could set up their kids and grandkids to have better opportunities. So knowing how much you need has to start with your priorities and not somebody else's. Here's what most people get wrong. When they start to ask themselves, how much do I need? They start by comparing themselves to other people their age or within their profession. The more important number is spending. How much is it going to cost to live the life you want to live? If you plan to spend $80,000 a year, that requires a very different portfolio than if you were going to spend $200,000 a year. I know that sounds obvious, but people don't always connect the dots. And here's another thing. Most people don't have a good grasp of how much they're spending. They might have a rough idea, but when we start to dig into the details, the picture looks very different. So if you want to get serious about answering, do I have enough? That's where you need to start. Start by understanding how much you're spending now, and then factor in the big adjustments you expect to change in retirement. Will your mortgage be paid off? Do you plan to travel more? Any major renovations? Is there any flexibility in your spending? Are you willing to cut back in the bad years in order to spend more during the good years? Now that can be a slippery slope if you overestimate your ability to cut back. But these are the types of questions to start asking to dial in how much you need. Let me walk you through the other items that are key in determining if you're going to have enough. So we just talked about spending. The other big item is income. And there's really two things that are worth honing in on. How much income you get before having to tap into your savings and the predictability of that income. So if you're somebody who has Social Security, a pension, rental income, the more income that you have and the less that you have to take from your portfolio, obviously, the more sustainable that's going to be. But if more of your income is coming from things like Social Security and pension than they are taking from an S&P 500 fund, the less impacted your lifestyle is going to be in periods of uncertainty. The third element is time. Somebody who wants to retire at 55 has very different portfolio needs and will need more money to sustain their retirement than somebody who plans to retire at 65. Timing can also be an element because of things like healthcare and penalties. Most retirement accounts cannot be assessed without a penalty until age 59 and a half. Most people are not eligible for Medicare until 65. It doesn't mean there's not other ways to bridge that gap. They just add additional considerations. Fourth, your family and health history. And I know this one's a little uncomfortable, but it impacts how much you might spend in retirement, and it influences how long this money might need to sustain you. Fifth is how you think about legacy. Some want to spend every dollar they've saved. Others want to prioritize leaving a large legacy for their kids and grandkids. These are two very different plans. And sixth, risk tolerance. There's some trade-offs here. The more aggressive your portfolio, the more uncertainty you have to live with, but this has a strong potential to increase your spending potential throughout retirement. None of these variables are fully reflected in generic calculators, but they matter. Here's something that might surprise you. I've sat across the table with people that had 5 or 10 million saved that were more anxious about their finances than somebody with 1 million saved. Why? They weren't worried about running out of money. They were worried about making mistakes, paying more in taxes than they had to, leaving money on the table. The stakes feel higher when you have more to protect. So when somebody asks, do I have enough? That could mean two very different things depending on who's asking about it. One might be really worried about running out of money. For others, they're really asking, am I being smart with what I have? Both are valid, but lead to very different conversations. So if generic numbers don't work, what should you do instead? Start by defining your vision. The more specific, the better. And get your arms wrapped around spending. Understand your income sources and how predictable they are and how flexible your spending is. That's how you figure out where your numbers are, not from rules of thumb. So here's the bottom line. Stop comparing yourself to generic benchmarks, which can lead to anxiety or missed opportunities. Hopefully this gave you a different way to think about the question. I put out retirement content regularly, where I focus on connecting your financial choices with your priorities so you can use your wealth to live the life you want to live. Drop any questions in the comments, and until next time.